You've got McAvaney, Cometti and Roberts. And then you've got these two, nuffies, living in denial. It's Croft and Horto. Welcome to the Fat Side Podcast.
All right, well, we've had a lot of wonderful guests on this podcast, but Mr. Rob Crawford, I'm very excited about this one. One of my favourite players as a young demon growing up, played 228 games for the Melbourne Football Club, kicked 428 goals, took countless hangers. Russell Robertson, thanks for jumping on the Fat Side Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, that's a nice intro. Countless hangers is the correct stat. Well done.
And Robbo, you were still taking hangers, I believe, even last year. I think you just hung up the boot. So talk about that. Who are you playing for and how are the team performing?
Yeah, good on you, mate. I played post my AFL career. I at the end of the day, I just love playing the game. And there's something about being out on that grass where I suppose the rest of your life sort of gets put on hold for a minute, troubles, worries, whatever, and you can go out there and you can still achieve, I don't mean achieve greatness. I think you can achieve a good feeling, a great feeling for yourself with things that you still can do. So it's hard to let go, like that old boxer, ideal that they just keep coming back. Well, it wasn't that for me. It just was my fitness regime. It was my workout. So I played for St Joey's first post-Melbourne down in Geelong. I coached those guys to a couple of prelims, and then my old club back in Tassie, and then finished up with the Doveton Eagles with a couple of premierships in 3 years, which was a nice way to go out.
Beautiful, mate. Now, isolation, it's been a great time to reflect, reevaluate, get a few things in order. Maybe it's the backyard. But for Russell Robertson, surely it's just playing your guitar and trying to become a superstar on the big stage.
It is very much about playing the guitar. Probably annoying the kids a lot with it, actually. But I'll tell you what I'm no good at, and that's being an at-home school teacher. That sucks. I'm glad the teachers have that role. And I've never I'll never take for granted sending my kid to school ever again because it's really difficult. But anyway, we're getting used to it here at this house. I, as you can see, haven't fixed up the facial hair yet. No need to do that. So I've basically just been, backyard, cleaning up the leaves, autumn's here, doing that every day. And I'm trying to improve myself. I suppose like everybody is at this point, you sort of go, it's reflection time. Take stock of what I've got and what I've been able to do and what's next. Because I was probably like most people out there complaining that, there was no time to do anything. I was driving my son to basketball every single day to all parts of Victoria and complaining about it. I'm not complaining anymore.
Definitely. Yeah, it is a good time for reflection. I'm doing a bit of yoga in my spare time because you're sitting at home all day and you're like, well, may as well bust out the mat and do something good to me. But let's go back to the beginning, Robbo. You grew up in Penguin, Tasmania. Quick question. Are you the biggest thing to come out of Penguin?
Yes. Well, we've actually got a couple of really handy players that came out of Penguin. They weren't the Gale brothers, the Richmond boys. They came out of Penguin. Yeah, they you can argue that they grew up in another town, but they spent a lot of time in Penguin before they headed off to the Big Smoke. We have Justin Plapp, who played for Richmond St Kilda, coaches now at Melbourne. He's an assistant coach at Melbourne. He came. We played junior footy together, and a couple of years. He's a year or so older than me. So in terms of output, I suppose Brendan Schmackagar wins that one. But it's funny. Something in the water down in Tassie, across the northwest coast, we were able to produce some really great players over the last 150 years, and none better than, I suppose, our god down there is Darryl Baldock. At the time, he was the Judd, the Hodge, the everything, and he gets lost, I guess, in the passing of time. But yeah, Richo, great player from Devonport, just down the way from us. We've got some talent to come out of Tassie.
I love it. Very passionate about your roots, Robbo. Is it true that you were first spotted on Almost Footy Legends? Is that actually right? I wanted to confirm that.
Well, yes and no. So I played for the Tassie Mariners, which was the under-18 side. So we were playing, the Calder Cannons, the Eastern Rangers, all those guys. Every second week I was in Melbourne playing when I was 16 and 17. And I had a handy year in my final year of under-18 TAC Cup. I played quite well at the Nationals. I kicked 50-odd goals out of full forward for the Tassie Mariners. And the Demons had actually got me to come and play a couple of top-up games. And this is back in the day when the AFL had a reserves, and they were playing at Punt Road Oval, which was, great times for all supporters because they could watch, a kick-off game at either Punt Road and sometimes on the MCG, and then they watch the senior, so you can keep track of your whole list and who's an up-and-comer, something that I think's really lost in football these days. But anyway, we won't go into that. I played as a top-up player, and the under-18 competition was used as top-ups when there was too many injuries on the list. Now, if you remember back as a Melbourne supporter, you would know around about 96 under Neil Baum, Melbourne just had this real awful period of injuries. Gary Lyon went down. Stephen Tingay was really injured. Paul Primke was a great centre-half back who went down with a back injury at Curtard and finished his career. We had a lot of guys like that. So Melbourne had to find a lot of top-ups, and I was one of those guys. I played a couple of games. One was down in Geelong, and one was at Punt Road. I played both times with Jess Sinclair, who went over to North Melbourne fame. We were top-ups, and we had an absolute ball. We thought, well, if this is all we ever get, I kept the shorts, the Melbourne shorts. The socks, I thought that was just the greatest thing of all time. But little did I know, a couple of months later, well, it was a couple of weeks later, actually, I'd taken a mark for the Tassie Mariners. And that was at North Launceston. It was a pretty good mark. And then a couple of weeks later, another one down in Hobart. Might have been against the Western Jets. And those marks came first and third in the Almost Footy Legends that year on the Footy Show.
Wow.
I guess all of that combined, the Melbourne Footy Club saw fit to pick me up number 68.
Woo!
Bloody good. That's a bloody ripping story. Now, you made your debut in 97 for the Dees. Wasn't a great year for the club, but the following year, coaching change, Neale Daniher comes in, and it's a bit of a rejuvenation for the club. Can you tell us about Neale's influence on you as a young player?
Absolutely, would love to. 97, the club's in a little bit of disarray, and playing true to where Melbourne were sort of placed within the business of football. Melbourne had not done well since leaving the MCC, probably back in the 70s, early 70s, post that golden era. Football became a bit of a business in this town, and clubs like your Essendons and your Collingwoods and Richmonds really took advantage of their huge membership bases and the fact that they came from boroughs of Melbourne to capitalise. The Melbourne Football Club, you have to understand, is a club that is born out of one place, and it's a little patch of land called the MCG. Collingwood is Collingwood. Richmond is a big Richmond, Geelong, you've got that area. Melbourne were finding it really hard to find their identity, and probably for 30 years were in the wilderness. Round about 98, Neale Daniher gets to the club. Well, round about, it was 98. Neale Daniher gets to the club and starts to understand where Melbourne were at within that business model. And he, along with a couple other guys, inevitably in the end it was Jimmy Steins who brought us back to the MCG. We were down at the Junction Oval in St Kilda, which, I mean, what the hell were we doing there? And we were training, boys, everywhere. Some days we're at Whitten Oval, some days we're at Vic Park, sharing grounds with other AFL clubs, and they were just looking at us going, what are you doing here? We're over in Bulleen training at Trinity Grammar. We're doing our sprint sessions in Sandringham because we were aligned to the Zebras back then. And we were the nomads of the AFL. We had no identity at all and no cash. So Neale took it upon himself to really, that's why we called him the Reverend at the time. He brought everybody together and started to make us understand where we were at. The secrets they weren't hidden anymore. And I think it probably gets lost a little bit by other supporters of other clubs. Melbourne, they're hopeless. But if you understand the Melbourne Football Club, the fact that we invented the game and that we were the broader Melbourne with all your clubs within our big area, how do you market and commercialise that
Very hard.
It was really, really difficult for us. And Neale Daniher started something, and I think it's been picked up and run with a lot better these days. So that's a long answer. I'm sorry, but it's a lot more to it. A lot more to it than that.
He's an inspiration. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. Now, the thing about Neale as well, and we had a really good chat to Andrew Leoncelli, Robbo. We're putting together a series on the merger from '96, and the thing that Chell said, and you speak about the facilities and having a ground share with all the different clubs, like he used the word shambles, and it sounded like it really was at the time. He said that Neale was this great galvanising influence when he came in because the club, like you said, probably needed a reverend. They needed a figurehead to come in, kind of shake the foundations of the club and lead them out of what was a hangover from that merger experience in '97. And then you come into this wonderful little period in '98 all the way through to 2006 where I'm going to put this one on the record because you speak about opposition supporters not maybe giving Melbourne credit and saying we're a basket case. That period of time, Melbourne were the only other club outside of Essendon, who were an absolute powerhouse team in that era, to make as many finals as they did, as a Victorian club. So Melbourne did get close to success, and we will talk about that shortly. But the thing that resonated with me that Andrew Leoncelli was telling us was Neale just came in and he had this clear direction and everything was back to basics and everything was simple. And he said it was incredible that the mood of the club had shifted so dramatically in such a short period of time from this feeling of this underwhelming feeling of shit, we're going nowhere as a list and as a footy club. All of a sudden he was a breath of fresh air and he gave you guys renewed confidence. So how was that feeling knowing that you had someone in there that was willing to back you guys and he'd clearly got the board involved as well?
Okay, so Neale has this ability to be a parental figure whilst also being a coach and obviously he was a talent with football, so he's got the credentials, but he has this ability to make you feel like he's got the ship under control and leave it to me, boys. You just do what you do best. So let me go a little bit deeper and explain that in layman, I suppose. Well, let me put it this way. My mother was a great influence in my life. Now, very blessed, great upbringing. Mum and dad. Dad did all he could to make sure that he got the best out of me with my football and my training and whatnot. But Mum, without even knowing it, had this ability to make you understand that no one's going to do it for you. You have to do it. And no one wants to hear you whinge and complain. You just have to get up and get on with it. My mum's famous words to me always was when I had a bit of a sore spot or I was complaining about something, she'd always say, oh, well. And I hated that. I hated it that my mother would say, oh, well, and I'd get no sympathy. But really, it's what Russell Robertson really, really needed. Because could you imagine what I would have been like with a mother that made me feel like I was always hard done by? My God, I became a little bit hard-edged, as much as you probably don't think so. There was nothing that I was afraid of. I never, ever shirked a contest. I never cared about my own self-well-being because of that upbringing my mother gave me. Now, Neale was exactly like that. His idea on everything is, it's your fault. Good or bad, it's your fault. And there ain't nothing you can do about it, so you might as well get on with it. And that basic attitude, oh, well, yep, this facility is shit. This thing that the Melbourne Football Club has, where we're the nomads, we don't have a training base, we have the lowest amount of supporters, we don't have any money. Oh, well, what are you going to do about it? There's nothing you can do. You've got this opportunity to play football. You might as well play football and get on with it. So, yeah, he was like my mother in that regard. We never got any sympathy. There was, boys, this game is hard. Do you want to play or do you not? If you don't want to play, go somewhere else. Or if you do, stay here, suck it up, princess, and let's get on with it. And we were able to take this, Andrew Leoncelli's words I'll use, shambles of a club, an absolute shambles. And that's no disrespect to any one person that was working in that system at the time. It was what they had to work with. There was no money, no facility, no training base. Our gym was a joke. We had half the amount of trainers that all these other clubs had. There was no way we should have won a game during that period, but we did. And we made it to a grand final in 2000. We played the second most amount of finals than any other Victorian club in that period. So it's something that we should be really proud of. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the ultimate and win a premiership, which really would have put Neale Daniher right up on a pedestal and us the players too, because we weren't a super list. We had a lot of, if you look at the bottom 10 on our team, whoever those guys are, I'm not going to name them, they were just average players, but they got the job done because it was Neale Daniher's attitude. Oh, well, what are you going to do? You're just going to have to get on with it. A lot more to it than that, of course, but that's about the basics of it.
Yeah, well said, Robbo. 98 was a particular season where, Melbourne had a fantastic opportunity of winning the flag when you look back at it, because Adelaide, of course, finished 5th. They come up against Melbourne in that first week of the finals. We'd finished 4th. Got the job done. Then the way the final system worked back then, unfortunately, it allowed Adelaide another opportunity to stay in the hunt. We came up against North in that prelim and went down. Adelaide go on and achieve the ultimate. They win their second flag back-to-back. That season, and I'll just bring up Chell again, because when I interviewed him for the Debrief podcast, he said the same thing. He said 98 was one that really burns, probably a little bit more than 2000. Rob will love speaking about that later. But do you agree with that 98 was a season that maybe got away from us as well?
Oh, God, yeah. More than 2000, more than 02, more than 04. 98, we were right in the wheelhouse of premiership. They call that the premiership clock. We were right there. We had a good mix of youth and older players, guys coming to the end of their career. Now was the time. And look, we punished Adelaide when we played them. We punished St Kilda when we played them. We came up against our nemesis in that time, which was North Melbourne. Wayne Carey was just too hard to stop. We got him a couple of years later. But in 98, we just weren't quite there. Friday night football, they loved Friday night football, or whether, I can't remember if it was Saturday night or Friday night, but they loved night football. North Melbourne, they pioneered it. We played our hearts out, and if we just got over that, I feel like things could be different. But it seems to be the way it is for the Melbourne Football Club, that curse that people keep talking about. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. We just always seem to fall just a little bit foul of luck, and it can go all the way back to the 90, coming up against Hawthorn in that era. I think it was 88 as well. We had a real bad stint of bad luck with the West Coast Eagles and Collingwood coming a draw. I believe it was in 88. We had to wait 3 weeks before we could play a game of football again under John Swoop and Northey. A lot of bad luck, but again, I just have to say like Neale said, and like he used to keep saying to us, it is what it is. It's happened. We just got to get on with it. And I feel like now the club is so well placed. If Chell and I had the club set up these guys have got now, who knows what could have happened. We just got to get a few other things right now. We're fast forwarding to 2020, probably 21 now, because this season's going to be an absolute farce. They've got the platform, they've got the base, they've got something to springboard off. We had nothing. We had nothing to jump off, and I'm pretty proud. I must say, boys, I'm really proud of what we were able to produce and give to our supporters through a pretty dark time.
2000, breakout season for yourself. You booted 44 goals and had a pretty good run, obviously, up until the grand final. I want to pick you up on one game, though. Round 14, 2000, against Collingwood. A teammate of yours by the name of Jeff Farmer kicked 9 goals in a half of football. Can you remember that game at all? And second part of the question, what was it like to share a forward line with an enigma like the Wiz?
Well, let's talk about that game first, because the way I remember it is I'd taken, I think, 13 marks in the first half. I was picking up where he was doing nothing. He didn't have a touch in the first half. He went and sat on the bench. The great story is Neale Daniher was so angry with Wiz. At half time, he went down into the rooms and piffed his magnet from the whiteboard. across the room and swore hard and said, I won't be needing that for the rest of the day, because he was going to spend the rest of the day on the bench. You remember a young fella, Ben Beams, I think it was, might have been the bloke that came on. I think it was Ben Beams. It might have been someone else.
No, it was Beamsy. You're right. I watched it the other day. You're right.
Yeah, Benny Beams. Well, he goes on, and Beamer was actually doing quite well up until he injured himself in the early stages, third quarter. And Neale, unfortunately, had nothing to go with except the whiz in terms of small forwards, because he needed his midfield rotation. So he sent Chris Fagan, the assistant coach, back down to the rooms to find the Wizards' little magnet, because he felt like if he'd gone out at three-quarter time with Wizard just written in texture on the on the board, Wizard would be wondering what's going on. So Fagan ventured back down to our rooms, found the magnet and brought it back up. In the meantime, Wizard decides to wake up and play football, and it's something to behold when the Wiz turns it on for Melbourne, not for Freo, because I don't think he turned it on ever for Freo. Sorry,
No,
Wiz, you should have stayed at Melbourne, and that's your fault, Wiz. You should have stayed with Melbourne. We'd have won a premiership if you'd have stayed. And we don't hold any grudges, because the Wiz went home because his grandmother was sick and get all of that. And he is a Melbourne person through and through, and he says it openly, and he's always at our Melbourne things, and I love him to death. He cost us a premiership though. But I didn't get it. I don't think I got a touch. And there's this great footage of me in the last quarter. The Wizards, I'm gone up this big hanger thinking, here we go, I'm going to get back on the board here, because I've kicked 2 in the first half and taken 13 marks. I was going to break the record for marks, and I didn't get a touch after that. And lo and behold, the Wiz jumps from the front of the pack and takes it literally out of my hands. And I was just so angry, but all those shenanigans aside, back to 98. You remember 98 final series? The Wizard was just doing some stuff out there that was so far ahead of the game. So far about what anybody else was doing. And I think it just gets lost too, that final series of the Wiz, that mark over Gary Lyon, flick passes, no look. It was just phenomenal. And you just love being out there high-fiving him when he would do it. But he was an angry little man out in the football field. Loved to swear at you. Loved to swear with you.
Bit of a dirty mouth. Now, something we've been talking a lot about on this show, Robbo, is grand final parades. You obviously did one in 2000. There's some great photos of Shane Woden wearing some pretty rude sunglasses. I think you might have had an interesting pair on yourself. Have you still got your speed dealers from back in the day? And can you remember the grand final parade? Because everyone we've spoken to on this show has got a different story, and it's a surreal day.
Oh, look, I'll never forget it. 19 years of age, and you're getting to take part in something that is just so part of the fabric of Australian life. You're a central figure. I don't mean you're the number one guy in the team. You are 2 teams, and you're one of the team, one of the players in the team. You think to yourself, how did I get here? 5 years ago, I was down in Tasmania kicking the ball around the front yard with my dad, still wondering what that first taste of beer was going to be like. I tell a lie, I was drinking at 14 in Tassie. Of course you were. No. We all had those stories, don't we, boys, of wanting to kick the winning goal in the grand final, or just at least being part of it. Unfortunately, the day didn't, go to plan, and that could be put down to that luck thing Melbourne seems to have. We came up against a rampaging, phenomenal team in Essendon, and we knew it. We were hoping that our youthful exuberance might carry us a little bit across the line. We had blokes like Brad Green, Cameron Bruce, who was out injured that day, and Paul Wheatley, who were just, Matthew Whelan, just new to the football club, and were without our superstars, Jim Steins, those guys that we looked up to for so long. And we were just hoping for the best, really, and unfortunately it didn't go our way. But the week, I'm glad you mentioned the week, because the grand final parade was phenomenal. I mean, can you imagine? I've watched it every single year and wondered what that would be like. I'm sitting in the back of a car all of a sudden, and I couldn't believe the amount of people, and I couldn't believe the amount of Melbourne supporters too. They were everywhere. I'm not saying they came out of
the woodwork.
There you are, Robbo.
Jumped on the bandwagon. No, they typically sort of do, Melbourne stick by us, but they're out there, and they were there that day. And I just remember looking out of that sea of people thinking, God, how how did I get here? And then you move into the grand final day. You try to keep everything as normal as possible and something that is completely abnormal. And you go out in the ground and you notice, yes, there's a lot more people here. And the one thing I will always remember is that national anthem. The way the crowd goes up in that crescendo at the end of the song, it's not lost on the players. Don't you worry. You can feel the voices coming at you. It's a tangible, it's a palpable, it's a feeling, not a sound. You can actually get, wow, geez, I can feel that noise. And then you sort of go, wow, now I've got to try to get a kick and win this game of football. Essendon was so focused, they ended up smashing us. But here's the thing, boys. If Nita had kicked those first couple of goals, we would have won. Your fault, Neats.
Wow. Put Nita on the spot. On the granny. I say this with the most respect, being an Essendon supporter.
Sure you do.
You're coming up against one of the great sides. There's only lost one game of the year. Is there still a sense of achievement getting to that grand final, considering some of the other quality opposition that you beat along the way, or does it just burn knowing that you didn't get there?
No, it doesn't burn. And a lot of people would think, why you even care about 2000? You got spanked. I mean, no, it doesn't burn. You're the two best teams for the year, and it's grand finals are really hard to make, whether it's AFL or suburban level. You ask anyone that's played suburban footy, the premiership's hard to win. You can be the best team all year and you come up on grand final day and lose to a team that just you should not lose to. That's football, and we were hoping to be that team. I'm going to walk with the computer and turn the lights on. Getting a bit dark here. I don't get sad about that at all. I'm 19 years of age and I'm thinking, I'll get another chance. Absolutely, I'll get another chance. But obviously the tail of the tape is we didn't get another chance. And Essendon were that wonderful team, and there's no shame losing to James Hird, Matty Lloyd, and Scotty Lucas and Shawnee Wellman and all those guys. I mean, they were just shocked. They were right in their premiership clock. And you got to look at Essendon in that era too. Unfortunately, they came up against a merged Brisbane Lions team. Beyond that, who were impossible to beat. I mean, they were impossible to beat. They were just stacked. And Essendon, by rights, probably should have won 3 premierships through that era because of that team. But Brisbane Lions just came along and said, see you later, boys. And that's football, that's sport. It can be cruel.
It is.
Thank you, Robbo. I enjoyed that. Rubbing it in a little bit. I say it to Rob all the time. You only got one. You should have got 3, but they got one, and we still don't have one since '64. But anyway, it's by the by. Just the qualifying final. I can't believe I didn't put in the run sheet. I've watched it so many times. I've lost count. I've probably watched it over 50 times, in all honesty. That's one of the great games as a Melbourne supporter, because all day we're behind, and then all of a sudden you just flick that switch, and Anthony McDonald had a brilliant game that day. Very underrated player in my opinion. Everything just kind of came together in that last quarter. And I'll just never forget the emotion, the crowd, the passion of that day. I'll never forget walking into school that week, knowing that we're in a prelim final with a great chance of getting to a great final. For me as a kid, that was probably the most buoyant feeling I think I'd ever had until we got to probably the 2006 elimination final. Where does that game rank, Robbo? Because that game for Melbourne supporters, I've thrown up posts before, what's your favourite game? I think the clear winner amongst the supporter base is the 2000 qualifying final. Was it the same for you? One of the most memorable?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For me, being a 19-year-old too, I wasn't at the top of my game. I was still learning, just turned, at the start of that year, and I was learning the game. I wasn't a walk-up start, so I had to fight for every inch, just like all young kids on that side. And luckily for me, I had a great supporter in Neale Daniher. I wasn't supported that day, though. I spent a lot of time on the bench, and it's just the way it went, because guys were just playing really well out there, so I didn't get a bit of a look. And that's where it's a team game. It's not like that anymore, is it? You're on the bench for at 3 minutes at max, and then you're back out on the ground, and then you've got 5 minutes to do something, and you're off the ground again. What a different game. But I spent most of the day on the bench just watching Cameron Bruce and Brad Green run rampant in the last quarter. And then don't forget Schwarter and those guys were out there too. And they played so well. And it was a great learning moment for all of us, I believe, in that era. We believed that we were just a team. I think we'd been thumped by 100 points during that year. Geelong had trounced us. Carlton had already trounced us. And sport will always show you that confidence, front-running, wet sail can produce the most amazing results. And that's what we love about sports. And I don't care whether it's a team you support. Seeing a team come from behind and pull off the most amazing victory is what we tune in for. I mean, I watch all games. I don't just watch Melbourne games. I watch them all for that. And we were able to be a part of one of those things. For me, you know, the next week was just as special. Nowhere near as special as the Carlton game, don't get me wrong, because of the manner in which that game was played and played out. But the North Melbourne game, you don't forget that we were their bunnies for so long, North Melbourne. Wayne Carey had we didn't have a centre half back that could stop him because Nita had to go forward.
They made such a great start as well to that game, Robbo.
They did, and it was kind of like, here we go. But we just sort of grinded. We did what we had to do in that game. And I remember this great moment for me in the last quarter, and I'm sorry to skip over the Carlton game. I'm not doing that at all. I certainly pay it its due, but the North Melbourne game for me was a great moment because that was the moment for all of us. We're going to a grand final. And I think it was the last quarter. I was out on the ground. I had an up and down form at the time, and I needed to sort of kick my couple of goals. And I'd done that already. And a big moment for me, last quarter, North Melbourne sort of rallied a little bit towards the end there. We sort of always had them at arm's length. But in the last bit, there was still this feeling like one more goal will seal this and we're going to a granny. So everyone sort of was flooding North Melbourne's forward line. Let's keep Carey and those forwards away from it, McKernan and the guys. I think Craig Scholl was kicking lots of goals, and we're like, geez, we've got to stop them kicking one more goal, and we need one, and it's all over. And I'm at centre half forward, all alone, playing on Stewie Cochrane, I think it was, young fella too, at the time. And
he had a weird mop of hair.
Yes, 100%. Anyway, the ball's they've kicked a goal. The ball's gone back to the centre, and they've cleared it again. And we're thinking, oh, God, here we go. Here's the Melbourne luck kicking in. And I think we've won the ball. We've booted it out wide. And I'm just thinking, ball, this is towards the members, ball, if the ball could just run out of bounds, that'd be a great result. We'll get some time. I don't want to really be anywhere near the ball right now. I just want the clock to run out, and we just waltz into a grand final. Anyway, the ball, someone from the Melbourne Footy Club breaks out from centre half back and beats everyone to the ball, picks the ball up, and then they look up and it's just me. There's no one else. So I've sort of led, but I was too close. So I think whoever it was that kicked it, I can't remember, we did the smart thing and just kicked the ball as long and as hard into the forward line to maybe get it to a boundary line down our forward line. Anyway, I've turned around and I'm sort of beating Stewie back to the ball. And the ball's bouncing end on end towards the Great Southern Stand, about 35 metres out from goal. And all of a sudden it bounced on its end and it comes back to my hands. And I've sort of got it. And it's one of those moments in a game of football or in sport where you feel like everything just slowed down around me and everything went into slow motion. I sort of looked at Stewie where he was and I ducked as fast as I could, and he's just flown over the top of me because he tried to tackle me with too much desperation. And I've sort of stood up. He's on the ground there. I look back up the ground. Everyone's just looking at me. You know, the 35 other players or 34 or whatever it is looking at me like, well, we can't influence you. It's all you, mate. So I look up and see this amazing grandstand of crowd, and I turn towards the goal, and I basically waltzed in and sort of checked 30 metres out, kicked it, and went straight through the middle. And the sound of the crowd was something I will never forget. This eruption of, yep, it's over. We're going to a grand final. I better start thinking about booking some tickets. And I've turned to the Great Southern Stand. You can imagine, 19 years of age, you've got 50,000 people in the Great Southern Stand, and you're just pointing your finger going, we're going to a grand final, baby. And I think that's what I said with a few F words in there as well. So.
You did. I actually watched that a couple of weekends ago. I watched the full replay. It's on YouTube. I chucked the HDMI in and put it on the plasma and watched it.
Do you do anything else? You just watch Melbourne games all day long, eh?
It's all I do, Robbo.
Imagine what his wife thinks. His poor wife.
No, mate, she loves it. I just set her up with the laptop. She just sits at the other end of the couch watching her Netflix. It's perfect. It's a good arrangement in my household, Robbo. It's a very good arrangement.
I like it.
Nah, do you know what? I almost kind of liken that moment to the Mitch Hannon goal against Geelong. Similar euphoria, knowing that we'd finally broken our 12 years, our drought. So for the younger viewers and listeners, they'll probably be able to correlate it with that. But just a quick one on this game. I don't want to go into it too much because we actually lose it, and it's a little bit bizarre that I'm bringing it up, but there's a game that always sits in the memory for me, and you probably know where I'm going with this, Robbo, but it's the 2002 semi-final against Adelaide. The reason I bring it up, I'll just read out the scores for people who aren't aware, maybe some of the general punters. Adelaide 8-2 to 1-4 at quarter time. Melbourne then go berserk in the second quarter, kick 7 goals to 4. Then Melbourne come out in the third quarter and kick 8 goals to 2. We end up being about 30-odd points up halfway through the fourth, and we just find a way to lose it because we'd run out of gas, obviously. That game, for me, is one of the most insane in terms of drama, what happened. It ebbed and flowed like none I've ever seen before. And I still think to this day, that is the single best game I've seen from a Melbourne player, and it was Travis Johnston. I thought he single-handedly changed the whole complexion of the match. And I stick to that today. I've seen Nita kick bags of 7, 8, 9. I've seen Cam Bruce kick 7 against Carlton, I remember, I think it was 04 or 05. You had a big day against Geelong where you kicked 7, but I still think that's the best I've ever seen a Melbourne player play on his day.
Yeah, and that's great. And I'll back you in there. I do remember him. There was one kick he kicked to me. What Travis could do was he would put the ball somewhere for you to lead to it. Like you'd lead, and then the ball would be seemingly, well, what are you putting it there for? And then you go, oh, thank you, because it's put to a spot where the defender couldn't anywhere get near it. Or you're just standing there and he'll kick the ball to an area and you just have to move on to it. Unfortunately for Travis, he lost that a little bit up in Brisbane later in his career, and that probably is what cruelled him. Just missing a few kicks towards the end. He's still not a bad player. He was a really great player. Tremendous for us. I remember a kick he did to me early in that game where I took one of those trademark sort of Robbo kicks, legs are going everywhere, take it on the chest and land on the ground. There was no way anyone was going to get a mark from a lead kick. Travis had the ball, free kick. He's looking up at us, Nita and I. It's all just congested. And I sort of did a couple of leads and I came back to a space and he put it to an area for me to run and jump so that I could use what I had. So he's thinking, what can Robbo do? If I do this, I'm sure he'll be able to. And it's just one of those clicky moments. It happened again a few years later against Carlton, one of the last games of the year. Might have even been the Cruiser Cup. He's done one of these kicks that's just popped over to an area for me because he knows, well, Robbo likes to jump. I'll just put it up for him and I'll put him into that perfect spot. Ooze used to do that a fair bit as well. And I really appreciated that because as a forward, you need someone to understand what you do. And Travis had that great knowledge, that link-up knowledge. He had a great football brain. We loved playing with him too because he was one of the fun blokes behind the scenes. He really loved being part of football and footy clubs.
Love that. That's my boy, Rob, by the way.
It is his boy. 2003, special year for you. Best and fairest at the club, highest honour. How did that feel, winning that amongst your peers?
Oh, I can't tell you how euphoric that was for me. And it sounds a little bit selfish, but you have to understand where I come from. And at the time, it was just, I can't believe it. Let's get more. Let's win more. Let's play more. Let's just have an absolute ball with this career. Post my career, I can't tell you what it means to me because there was a day when I was about 14 years of age and I was sitting at the, I think I just came into the kitchen area where Dad was sitting with his best mate, and his best mate had a son who was a year older than me and is quite a handy footballer. There were quite a few handy footballers in Penguin at the time, my little hometown down there, and I was by no means the best at the time, but I certainly had some traits. And I'd made a selected side. I can't even remember what it was, but it was obviously one of those ones as you make your way through and make it to the under-18 and the TAC Cup and all that sort of stuff. And he said, tell I won't use his name, we'll just say Steve. Tell Steve what you just made. And I told him I've made this selected side. And the shock horror look on my dad's best mate's face that how the hell have you made this? You're hopeless. and I really, my football ability to a point was subjective. You know, some people would think that I'm just the fly-by-night, sort of every now and then do something special. The Melbourne supporters would probably tell you otherwise because they were there every single week and they would say, Robbo, we could always rely on him to kick 2 goals. And I did because I averaged 2 goals throughout my career. And kicking goals ain't easy to do when you're a small-ass forward and you're not the focal point, and neither is. So I'll stand by my own. I'll look after myself there. But anyway, that really hurt me when I heard him say that. And I looked at my dad, and Dad just looked at me and didn't say anything either. And I'm sure it hurt him too. My dad's look was, well, you know, what are you going to do about it? So I used that for the rest of my career. And I know a lot of people always thought I was just this enigmatic forward who liked to take a hanger. And that wasn't it at all. I wanted to be respected and renowned as a good footballer who never, ever was scared. I wanted to make my dad proud that I was a hard, tough footballer who went for everything. And there was a great article written in the paper for me one day. They called me the devil-may-care demon, which meant that I had no fear. I just went for it. I had no fear with how I went in for the ball, but I had no fear about how I played my football as well, because let's just try this and see what happens. And a lot of the times it worked. Sometimes it didn't. I know that. But a lot of the time it did work, and it gave my teammates what they needed at that moment, a bit of a boost, and a crowd, a bit of a rise. And they're like, Robbo, that thing, you know, and everyone's sort of up and about. And that was my value. And Neale Daniher knew that was my value. And he used to say to me, Robbo, go, just keep going for it, mate. I'm not telling you anything. And I'd have supporters say to me, you know, you need to pull your head in or stop doing this and stop doing that. My coach, Neale Daniher, told me to go for it. So you can shut up, you know. To answer your question, winning the best and fairest as a small, short-ass forward who's not getting kicked to, who had a really consistent year and had won another award from another group, the Cotarians, we think it was, giving out an award most consistent player, and I'd won that as well on the night. For me, that was uncharted territory. To be a consistent footballer was so meaningful for me. And I think it's where I got a lot of respect amongst my peers too. And you ask Chell's one of the most fiercest, I guess, he goes in to bat for me all the time. He thinks a lot of me, and I've never understood why. I mean, he's just an absolute legend, Chell. He's one of the most amazing people if you ever get to meet him. I love him to bits. And he seemed to think that I was great, and he used to pump me up to everybody. And that was probably because of that consistency I kind of found through that era. I think I came second in the best and fairest a couple of years later. So for me, very, very special. We weren't able to win the ultimate, boys. We weren't able to win a grand final, and we weren't allowed, obviously, a lot of success. But, you know, you got to take what you can. And we only get one life, and that was my little go at it. And, you know, there's certainly things in there that I'll treasure forever, and that was one of them.
I was going to say, I've got a similar story where a coach said I wasn't going to make it, and I used it as motivation and fire in the belly for the rest of my career, and I never made it. So, anyway.
Look at you now, though, mate. Look at you now.
Oh, no, I'm talking to Robbo, mate. I'm stoked. Now, Robbo, I've got a bit of beef with you. I've got some beef. 2004, just quickly. This really irks me. So I was 15 at the time, so I was at my peak of passion. Nothing in the world mattered more than the Melbourne Football Club when I was 15. But what happened? We were top after round 18. I've never had the chance to actually ask a Melbourne player this question. I actually have. I was too pussy to ask Nita. I was too pussy to ask the Wiz, because he's the Wiz, and he wasn't there at the time. Obviously, he was at Freo. And I didn't ask Chell because he's one of the nicest blokes on the planet, as you've just said. But what happened? We were top. We'd just beaten Hawthorn. They flashed up the ladder I was at the G and it was like Melbourne Demons, top of the ladder. I was dreaming in the boarding house at Xavier College going, shit, my club might actually win the granny. What did we do? We went and lost we lost the last 5 games of the year. Robbo, clear it up for me.
Firstly, I'll say I'm glad that you had way too much respect to ask this question of the other guys, but you can ask it of me.
That's not what I'm saying.
It's my friendly face. Don't worry, I get it. Look, I will answer that because it probably Nita answered it best when we have a chat about it, and we've chatted about it before. We in 2004. Through that area, had an acute awareness that we were a long way behind the 8 ball in that subject that we were talking about at the start, the nomads, no money, paying 94% of the salary cap. We don't know whether we're going to have a major sponsor. We don't know whether we're actually going to have a club next year. That's how we lived. And I know that sounds a little bit over the top, but it's the truth. Behind closed doors, that's how they spoke to us. And I remember we played against Freo, and we were watching them. We got to train in the West Coast Eagles training over there at Subiaco. They had their area. We were allowed to train in there. And I remember going into the change rooms going, oh my God, look what they had. They had pools, spas, ice baths, all the professional stuff, all the high science. We had nothing. We had the Junction Oval. We had a couple of assistant coaches, maybe a couple of skill coaches. These guys had a cast 1,000. It's not an excuse. And I don't want to sound like I'm using it as an excuse. But you've got to think, the way that the AFL's gone now, look how much science they throw to what they do. Look how many people are sitting on the boundary line assisting these players. Look how many people are involved in football clubs, how much money they use. And if you don't have the money, and if you don't have the power, and you don't have the strength, and you don't have the time to put into your players, you ain't going to win. So every single player at the Fremantle Football Club at that time had a coach probably for 2 or 3 players. And they were able to dedicate their time to those 2 or 3 players, so that those players went from here to here. And the thing about good football is they are able to go up levels with coaching. They've got levels. That's why they're there. Well, we got our coaching. Neale Daniher didn't have enough time to get around all of us. Assistant coaches didn't have enough time. So we just kept hitting our ceiling of learning and training time, and we weren't able to take those next steps and use the science and all the money that's thrown at them. And I really do firmly believe that had we had better opportunity in that regard, we might have mentally been a little bit better and more prepared, and knew that we were prepared for these games and the opposition that were coming at us. And maybe we would have, been a little bit better in those situations. So there's no excuse. We mentally lost it after being on top of the ladder. We didn't have enough people to help our people get through that time, where other clubs probably had more people to help settle these young 18-year-olds, these 21-year-olds that have no clue about life and elite sport. They're just doing what they're told. And that's what we were. So we sort of needed a little bit more assistance. And I've just got to, and it must sting in the craw for a Melbourne supporter like yourself, mate, because you could have had an amazing youth going through school with 2 or 3 premierships, but unfortunately it was taken from you. It was taken from me too. Yeah. And now, no excuses. Now we've got it. We've got this amazing club set up. A couple of things we need, like a home base, which we're working on, and we're not too far away. But by all intents and purposes, we've got a really great training base now, and a really great coach, and a great setup. Unfortunately, we just don't have a world that allows us to play sport.
This is true. But I will never forget in that elimination final, Rob will love this because, of course, Essendon got up by 5 points, 5 points I think it was. Clint Bizzle nearly took a mark in the goal square to tie it. Didn't. They kicked it. Hurd throwing the ball up. Rob probably loves me talking about this.
We haven't won a final since, so I remember it quite well.
Yeah, there you go. So, but I'll never forget that day. I had this big, fat Essendon supporter just yelling at me at the full-time siren. I was crying. I was only 15. My dad was going to belt him. Anyway, it was a horrible moment. And one of the reasons why I hate Essendon as much as I do, Robbo, I had to put that in. We'll kick on because, of course, 05, and I'm just going to put it on the agenda. You kick 73-30. You finished third in the Coleman. You should have made the All-Australian. We know that, Robbo, so don't worry about it. Now, that was an incredible run. We lost 7 in a row and then all of a sudden had to win 3 in a row. You beat Geelong. Incredible circumstances. I was there my first time down at Cardinia Park. You kicked 7 that day, I think. And then Jeff White against the Doggies, 22 points down, 7 minutes to go, pulled it out of our arse. Neale's running down the race, all the emotion. And then you kicked a banana, a snap around the corner leg break against Essendon to get us into the finals. And then it all went to shit. But this is the thing. I think the hurt of 05 was necessary because the emotion and the passion after beating St Kilda, being 22 points down at halftime in 06, it made it all worth it, Robbo, because that was a magical, magical night. Brock McLean went berserk. Unfortunately, the game passed him by. I think it got too quick for him. And Nita kicked 4 that night, and I think it was just all the pain that we'd suffered in 04, the way it went to shit, in 02, and then obviously what I just spoke about in 05. How was that feeling at the end of the game in 06, knowing we won our first finals game in 4 years?
It was great, but for me, being where I was in my career wasn't anywhere near enough after all I'd been through and learnt to that point. So for Brock and guys that were younger at that time, it was probably enough, and supporters as well, because there was so many downtimes. But I still had 2000 ringing in my ears. I still had 98 ringing in my ears. I still had all this hurt from not having the club that all these other clubs had ringing in my ears. And I just wanted to take it further. And I do believe, I felt at the time we didn't have the support that we needed to go all the way. I believe that Neale Daniher was the right man for the job, but I didn't believe he had the support that he needed for the rest of the football club. And that wasn't any individual's fault. That was the way it was set up. To this day, thinking back and right in this moment, that would probably have been my emotion at the time. I just never felt that we were a real club like the other clubs were. And that's sad. That's sad. We were an AFL club. We invented the game. And at the time, I didn't feel like we were a real club. They kept saying to us, sorry, we can't pay you the amount of money that you need to be paid because of past mistakes. Sorry, we can only pay 94% of the salary cap. Sorry, our major sponsors are leaving us. We have to hold off payments for a while. That's just ridiculous and unheard of. And what we were able to produce out in the ground was great. And I wanted to stick it up everybody and go all the way to a grand final. And maybe we tried too hard. Maybe mentally we were overstimulated, I don't know, to try to win so much. We weren't comfortable. You need to be comfortable as an AFL footballer. And that's what they're pulling their hair out at the moment trying to do for the modern day footballer, is make them comfortable so that they can produce the best at any given moment. So give them all the physio they need, give them all the doctors, and give them all the setup that they need, give them the rest that they need, the food that they need. What do they need? Let's give it to them. And we just didn't have any of that. We just had this amazing coach in Neale Daniher, and that's all we knew we had.
Beautiful. Love that. Rob, what do you got for us, mate?
Yeah, I'm just going to skip us ahead for this Melbourne loving that I'm a part of at the moment.
What about the Freo game?
We're skipping the Freo game.
Game, mate. That was the Robbo snap around the corner. You wouldn't go away, Robbo. Freo kept coming back, and then Robbo, and then Wanamira, and then Robbo, and then Wanna. Come on, that was a great day. That's all. We'll just leave it at that. Great day.
Now, I don't know this game, but Adrian's put this in the run sheet because he's a Melbourne supporter. Is it true that in your last game, with 2 seconds to go, you tried to take a hanger? Is that true?
I probably try to take a hanger every second of that game, even if the ball's at the other end. I don't remember much about my last game, to be completely honest with you. I know I kicked 1 goal. I was shot. To be honest with you, I was gone. I was so dead in my body for the Melbourne Football Club because of what I felt was an injustice at the time. Of course you do. No one ever leaves the game like they want to leave it. But we were, I suppose, Dean Bailey was acting on behalf of others. And he'd sort of called me into the room and said, look, you're our best forward, but we're going to put our faith into Liam Jara, and you're going to probably step aside for him. I know you probably got another year or two left in you. I couldn't forgive that, because I just think a good club, looks after James McDonald after the service he'd given, rather than call him into a room and in front of everybody tell him that he's sacked, which is just disgusting. And I think all AFL supporters, including you, Rob, would think that's just terrible. You don't look after your great senior players like that. James McDonald is forced to cry in front of all his teammates because he's just found out that he's no longer required, and he's won a couple of best and fairest. What the hell was going on?
But we did that. That happened to so many players, Robbo, and that still hurts the supporter base more than anything else that's ever happened in the last 20 years. Was the way that we treated the senior players, the ones that had given so much.
Yeah, and it hurt us for a lot of years. And all the young players that came into our football club, it hurt them as well, because they had no senior players to look up to and be guided by. I mean, I should have been there playing on Matty Scarlett while Liam Jara was able to run around like I was able to run around at the start of my career, with Schwarter and Nita got the best guys and Jeff Farmer got the best guys. I was able to learn the game. But unfortunately for Liam, you're our next full forward and you've got to do everything, and whatever the paper says about you, you cop that. There's a lot of little things in there that I was dead in that last game. I'd kicked 5 goals the game before against Carlton, and I'd won the leading goal kicking, from 8 or 9 games or 10 games or whatever it was. And I know very well that my defensive game was not good. It was not good, let's be honest. I was so focused on that offensive side. But I'd snapped my Achilles a couple of years before, and I was still at the top of my game. I came back, played against Geelong as my first game back in the seniors, round 5. And Matty Scarlett said to me, mate, you haven't lost a thing. And Scarlett and I get along real well. I think he's one of the greatest backmen I've ever seen. And to this day, I have so much respect for him and the way he went about it. And he said to me, you haven't lost a thing, mate. You're even quicker, I reckon, now. And it's because I had that time off to reflect and look at football and learn, instead of the intense preseason play, which I'd had my whole career, because I never was injured. I never got injured. I always played and I always trained. I was very proud of that. And all I needed was a coach and a system to say to me, listen, the game's changing. It's very defensive now. Aaron Davies effectively changed the way we play football, and we've got frontal pressure now. So let's work together and get better at that. But I didn't have a word spoken to me, and I was basically done. And that's the way it goes, and that's my fault. Remember what Mum said. It's my fault. It's nobody else's fault. I should have understood that, and I should have worked on it by myself, but I didn't, unfortunately. But I was dirty at the time. I'm not dirty anymore, not one bit. I love my footy club, and I'll always be there for my footy club. And that's all just history now.
Yeah, and I can't wait for the bender when we win a flag. I was just going to say, Robbo, we did a hashtag Ask Robbo question thing here, and I've actually thrown myself into this just quickly because I couldn't help myself because I'm a nuffy, Rob. But who is more skillful out of the 3 players, Adam Uze, the Wiz, or Aaron Davey? Just a quick answer.
Jeez. Look, I can say Adam Uze quite categorically, because I saw Adam Uze on a day-to-day basis at training, playing other sports. He could just do anything. Golf, hit the ball like on a dart down the middle of the fairway. And if he'd had concentrated on that, he could be a professional golfer. My game was squash growing up, boys. I'm ashamed to say that, but Mum and Dad played squash, yeah. And
That's a bit posh, Robbo.
Yeah, very posh.
That's
very,
right.
very Melbourne Football Club, yeah. Anyway, I thought, I've got Ooze at this game. Well, he beats me at everything else. Let's come play squash with me, Ooze. So we went down to MSAC and we lined up, and he flogged me. I'd played my whole junior career. He hadn't picked up a racket. But I knew when I was leading out a full forward to Adam Uze, my sternum was in trouble, because he was going to spank that ball right on the chest, and you would hear that sound a mile off. Those goals from the boundary line, the soccer goals, at training, he did that all the time. I remember we were running around doing a warm-up lap of the Junction Oval, and that's a cricket ground. and there's the sight screens at the end of each end, and in one of the sight screens there was a hole, could not have been any bigger than probably double the size of a football diameter. And from about 30 metres away, he goes, "Watch this, I'll kick it through the hole." And yep, it went straight through this hole. Everybody in the hole, we're jogging a lap. Everyone stopped and looked at him and said, "You're taking a piss, mate. That's unbelievable." No,
Love
Adam,
that.
Adam Urzo. This one's from Troy Ross. Where did the 2 flags for Dovey Eagles stand in your list of achievements? Just a quick answer, Robbo.
no, premierships are hard to win anywhere you go. So the feeling and elation of the siren going. We beat Endeavour Hills it was only Div 3. So, put my hand up. I went and played for a mate who, was trying to get his club back on track, and I still felt like I wanted to have a run around, not too far from home. I'm not saying I live in Doveton. I'm down Bayside, but I found it nice and close to home that I could just travel up to Dovey and roll around, and it was fun. And we won a premiership and just got over the top of Endeavour Hills, come from behind victory. Wow, what a feeling. And the night that ensued after that and the day that ensued after that. And then, last year was nice to win another one, and I put my boots in the middle of the ground and said, "That's it, I'm done." We won. We spanked Springvale Districts, and it was a bit of party time in the last quarter there. We could just sit back and enjoy the last quarter of football that I'll ever play with premiership glory.
Well done. Love that. Now, Rob, it's your turn, mate.
All right.
This is big. This is
big. So I don't know if you've been worded up at all about this, Robbo, but
oh no, he watches the Fat Side religiously.
I mean, who doesn't? Everyone watches it. So we've been doing a quarantine quiz with all the players who've come on the program because there's nothing better to do in quarantine than do trivia. So 10 questions. Some are footy, some are general knowledge. I'll give you the leaderboard just so you know. Glenn Manton's on top with 6. Alan Tooby's got 5. Brad Saul 4, and Alex Johnson woeful 2. So if you get more than 2, you won't be last. So that's the bar you want to hit first, okay? Rory wants to win. All right. Question 1. Who won the 2004 Brownlow medal?
2004 Brownlow medal. Was that Simon Black?
No, it wasn't Simon Black. It was Chris Judd.
Juddy. God, you should have just gone Juddy or Ablett. It was one of those two.
Question 2. Who wrote the song Up There Kazali?
That's by old mate. It's got a mental blank. I talk to him all the time.
Robbo!
He sings on grand final day every day.
He does.
He bloody mental blank. I forgot him.
You actually talk to him or not?
I'd sang a song with him about 3 years ago. Oh my God!
He's gonna hate you if he says this.
Now I know if you give me the start letter, is there any way you can give me the start letter of his name?
First, M. M for Melbourne.
God, you are kidding me.
MB. Initials
Mike
MB.
Brady. Mike Brady.
Oh, well done. We'll give it to him.
All right, you're on the board. First point.
Quarantine brain. That's what.
Yeah, that's
That's all right.
Question 3. What is the tallest mountain in Tasmania?
Yeah, sorry, it just cut out on me there. Would that be Mount Wellington?
No, it's not Mount Wellington. It's Mount Ossa.
Ah, God, I'm going to fail at this, aren't I? Jeez.
Question 4. What year did World War I finish?
No, 21.
Oh, 1918, unfortunately.
15. Oh, my God, I sound like an absolute fool.
It's all right. Question 5.
Just beat Jono. We've realigned our expectations now.
What team did the Gold Coast Suns record their first ever win against?
Not good with footy trivia. Was it? I'll go with GWS.
No, it was Port Adelaide in round 5, 2011.
Jesus, I'm struggling.
What were Port Dogs to play against, just quietly?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Short
Good.
answer.
The short answer, yes. If you watch TV, you should get this one. What is the name of Tony Soprano's daughter in the TV show The Sopranos?
Well, I never watched that. I never watched that show. My missus did. I wish she was here in the room with me. I do. He's dead now. I can win that by saying that, can't I?
James Gandolfini. James Gandolfini is dead, but that wasn't the question.
Hang on. Why don't we give him an Always Sunny question or something, Rob?
What do you watch?
I watch a lot of movies. I watch documentaries. I watch a lot of Netflix at the moment. Watching a lot of The Tiger King.
All right. What is no point. Too easy. No, I'm being ruthless today. I'm being ruthless.
Yeah, why are we trying to give him points?
Yeah, question 7. Moving on. The answer was Meadow Soprano.
Meadow Soprano. I knew it was Meadow Soprano. It was in my head. I just couldn't bloody think of it again. Go on.
Question 7. Who is the game's record holder for the Melbourne Demons Football Club?
God, if I didn't get that, I'm in trouble. That's David Neitz.
That is David Nates. Well done. 2 points.
He said his greatest achievement was having a bar named after him in the MCC.
The MCG. It's not a bad bar, actually. It's good.
This one's a bit of geography for you, Robbo. This is a hard one. Name 2 countries with the letter X in their name.
God, is there a country with a letter?
There's 2. Well, there's 2. Okay, if you get one, I'll give you a point.
Come on.
Oh,
It's hard when you're in the spot and you know the answers. I'm looking straight at them.
It's one of them is a popular cuisine of food.
One of them is where all the cartels are.
That's giving it away.
the X in it.
Yeah.
Mexico.
That's a point. Question.
How's that? They're famous for cartels.
There you go. Question 9. How many Formula One championships has Lewis Hamilton won?
Ooh, good question. Because I hate Formula One or anything. Hate it. I'm going to take an absolute stab in the dark.
Yep,
He's been around a while now, hasn't he? So
he has.
He's only one behind the all-time leader as well, Robbo. Just for a hint.
what am I on? How many have I got?
You're on 3, so you're sandwiched between Alex Johnson and Brad Sewell right now.
You're not bottom, so it's okay.
I'm going to say 6.
That is absolutely correct. Well done.
He's equal third.
You're equal third. Very nice. And the last question, Robbo. This is a biggie. I quite like asking this question. According to the AFL stats website, AFL tables, how many Brownlow medal votes did you poll in your career?
Bugger all, I think. It's got to be like low. Be like 5, 4,
Nah, it's more than that. It was 17.
17. Oh my god!
Yeah, it's pretty
I'm
good.
actually not sad about not getting that right. That's amazing.
Well, Robbo, honourable effort. You got 4 out of 10. It's a fail, but you're not last. So you and Brad Sewell can sit in the number 4 club together, but just be happy knowing that you're a lot better than Alex Johnson. So
It's not saying much, really. I know, Jono.
He's one of my good mates. I'm going to tell him that. I love that.
He's a very funny man.
He's brilliant. He was on the table with you, Robert, at my wedding. I had my wedding just before the lockdown period, and I think I sandwiched him in between you, Rob.
Do you want to hear a funny story about that? Like,
Yeah.
I went to Bali with my wife, and he was there, and he was on the beach with Taz, and I think it was either Swanee or I think it was Swanee and Taz.
Yeah.
And I've walked up, and he's got a hat on, and Taz has got the rig out, the triceps are hanging out, and obviously you know what Swanee looks like. And I've gone, "G'day, Swanee, g'day, Taz." And then I've looked at Jono, and he's wearing a hat and the sunnies, and he never was he never did interviews. He was never on TV. So I'm going, "Who's this bloke?" I said, "And what's your name?" "G'day, mate, how you going?"
It's Ben Johnson.
He must have thought, "Oh, Jono, you flog, Robbo."
Well, to be fair, if you're getting around with Swanee and Taz, you're probably going to be the third.
Yeah.
Around.
He looked like he was the third, just a hanger-on mate that trying to leech off them.
Yeah, far out the Rat Pack. All right, well, I think Rob, you got to go, mate. What are you doing? You got to do PT. Oh, right. We better not interfere with that, Robbo. We better wrap it up then. Yeah, we will, mate. We will. What I'm going to do, Robbo, is I'm going to send you a little bit from, I'll just reference his name, Paul Connor, who's a loyal Melbourne fan. He had some incredible words to say about yourself, mate, and about Neale's last game, which was incidentally against Rob's mob, Essendon. We lost with the final 6 seconds of the game, but he said some lovely words about yourself, mate, so I'll send that through to you directly. Beautiful, mate. Thanks a lot for jumping on.
It's been great. Thanks, guys. It's been great reminiscing on old times, and I wish you all very well in this trying time. And I just want to send out a message to all Melbourne supporters out there who are watching this. Keep the faith, stay strong, and all football supporters everywhere. Use the time well, and we'll come out and, who knows, next year could be the best year of your life.
Love it. Very good words. Thanks, Robbo.
See you, boys.